Please think before you post a comment like that. So this guy here is a Christian author, makes money selling books about God. Let's be honest, do you think he's going to agree with Sitchin? So Sitchin says there's aliens, he says no, there's God. You're going to get him to debunk him so he can sell more books. That's logical. So let's have a look at some of the things that he says. So here it says, if the planet, in other words Nibiru, their home planet, is real, no cuneiform tablet describes a planet by any name beyond Pluto. Now what this person, I was going to be rude there, Michael, hasn't done, he hasn't gone to the Iraq Museum and looked through hundreds of thousands of tablets and then said, no, I can't find it. Bearing in mind there's tablets in the Louvre, there's tablets in Nineveh Library, there's tablets in the British Museum. There is basically Sumerian cuneiform tablets all over the world. Hundreds of thousands of them. So he's not gone everywhere and read them. Because if he went everywhere, he'd be frightened that he'd actually find the actual correct tablets. So he's not going to do that. So just by the process of not looking, he can then on his website say there is no tablet that says XYZ. But if he looked, he would find it, just as obviously Sitchin did. Now, the Iraq Museum, for example, do not describe, so this is their website, they do not describe each tablet. In other words, you would have to go there and read it. So that's another reason why this numpty's wrong. Oh, did I call him a numpty? What a shame. So there's also, bearing in mind, Sitchin has been studying Sumerian for at least the 60s. So he's obviously been around a bit, and whereas this person's probably only just started researching what Sitchin's talking about. Now the tablets here, it says tablets are part of a cache of thousands that were looted artifacts purchased by Hobby Lobby and seized by the government. So in other words, when you can't find tablets, do not blame Sitchin. There's governments as well as supposed groups that go into Iraq and smash them up, etc. So again, another reason why Sitchin's right. Now, also what this numpty, oh, damn it, done it again, probably didn't realise is that there's cuneiform tablets in the Morgan Library that actually depict all the correct amount of stars and planets and moons in our solar system, which includes their own planet. So all you have to do, people, is just have a little bit of common sense. So when you've got someone that's a Bible person, he is going to try his hardest. So just put that out of your head. Unless you've done the research, because obviously you're going by someone else, do what I do. I do the research. You do it now. Your turn. So enough. Fed up. What's your opinion on this? I think this is going to be a fake setup. So let me explain it. Zahi Hawass is saying he believes the body of the Pharaoh Khufu, which is inside the Great Pyramid, he believes it's inside there, underneath the Queen's chamber. Now, no mummies have ever been found in any pyramid whatsoever. Watch my videos, I totally prove that. And so, obviously, the pyramids were not tombs. I mean, just look at what a tomb looks like, you know, inside a tomb. There's nothing inside a pyramid, but this is what's inside a tomb, all the writings and everything. So I'm of the opinion that they're going to try and pretend there's a body using LiDAR, etc., which is what's happening at the moment at the Great Pyramids. They're actually doing more tests. So if they pretend there's a body in there, that ends the ancient aliens. So I think they're faking it. The video you're about to watch after I finish talking is a clip from a video that's on my Patreon page, and it's called Everything You Need to Know About Spirits. Now there's 3 segments at the moment, and every week there's another segment. Now there's loads of videos on my Patreon page already, there's 41, but so the clip you'll be watching is from segment 1, and it's going through absolutely everything you need to know about spirits. So hopefully you like it. If you do like it, what you see in a second, the clip of it, feel free to watch the longer video, way longer, on my Patreon page, which is called Our True History. Thank you very much. Was there really a Big Bang, and what's that got to do with spirits? It's when spirits first started. Stephen Hawking suggested that if the universe is expanding, then if we rewind it, we would see it go back to a single point of time. Now, is that the only reference we have to the Big Bang? Actually, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth talk about the Big Bang. Thoth was a god in ancient Egyptian times. The text for the Emerald Tablets first appeared in a number of early medieval Arabic sources, the oldest of which dates to the late 8th or 9th century. It was translated into Latin several times in the 12th and 13th century. Numerous interpretation and commentaries followed. There were 10 tablets which were divided into 13 parts. The last two are so great and far-reaching in their importance that at present it is forbidden to release them to the world at large, so it's claimed. Because of these translations by different people over centuries, we can say with some degree of certainty that the translations copied something. Sadly, the original tablets have been lost or hid away from view. This is the text about the start of the universe from the Emerald Tablets. In the beginning there was void and nothingness, a timeless, spaceless nothingness, and into nothingness came a thought, purposeful, all-pervading, and it filled the void. There existed no matter, only force, a movement, a vortex of vibration, of purposeful thought that filled the void. Although the creation of the universe in the tablets come from a thought, it's the only thing we have to go on. And it actually makes sense, because everything in the physical world has a top, bottom and two sides, yet the universe may not. Only a thought is endless. Just a few simple questions. I can't answer them, but I'm sure you guys can. So first of all, if there's a dome, why are they sending rockets up? What's the benefit if they're going to waste money when it hits the top and breaks? Now, I have been told that someone said that they're trying to break free out the top. But why not do it to the side? That's a lot easier than it is sending rockets up. So that's the first question. Second question is, why advertise that you're sending up rockets to up in the sky if you're trying to do it quietly and we're not supposed to know there's a dome? So that's the second question, because obviously we've got people sending up rockets all the time. So what, why are they notifying us that they're sending it up to hit the dome? So answer that one. That's the second question. Halley's Comet is my favourite one that no one ever answers. So Halley's Comet comes around every 70 odd years. So if you can tell me who the person is every 70 years that sends Halley's Comet up inside the dome, because if it's outside the dome then there's space, and of course there's people out there that say there's no such thing as space. And then they say there's water, but obviously we can see the trail of ice from Halley's Comet, in which case it's space still. So who's the person that sends it up and every 70 odd years? Because it's we know about Halley's Comet for thousands of years. There's actually a written record. So if you could answer that, that would be cool. And the final piece to the resistance one. Now this is a amateur, not NASA, amateur rocket up in America, which would be pretty much almost in the middle of your flat Earth. So let's have a look at this. Now as you see, the camera shows an equal distance everybody. Not one side further than the other. And the reason for that is because it's on a ball. Now this is another amateur rocket, this time in Australia, which is about 4,000 miles from the edge, but 20,000 miles from the other side. So in other words, it shouldn't be in the middle. And then when you watch, unfortunately, there we are, steady shot there. So it's equal, and you only get it equal if you're in a ball. On a ball. So if no one's ever going to answer that one, that's because you can't answer why it's equal, because obviously on a ball it's always going to be equal. So yeah, there you go. So no one's going to answer those. So let's all forget the flat Earth and the dome and just get on with our lives. Something that no one's thought of, obviously except me, is we're talking about the firmament here, which supposedly is this dome. Now the dome actually goes back to even the time of Enoch. Now Enoch lived in the Middle East, middle giving you a clue. So Enoch did not go to the side, he did not go to the other side. All he would have seen even though we can't see it, is the dome at the top. So how the hell did he see the dome at the top from the Middle East, and everyone else that now has moved around the whole planet cannot see any of the dome whatsoever? And please don't say, oh, I saw a shimmering light and therefore it bounced off of the atmosphere, which is what the actual original word for firmament is. So to answer why Enoch could see a firmament and no one else can. Also, just for the people there that keep talking about NASA lying, they do lie. Let me explain something to you. They do and did do live streams, and they actually used to have to cut the live streams because they actually caught UFOs in the live streams. People would see the UFO flying around. So they ended up having to stop doing that live streams because, guess what? Because they didn't want to show. Now, they did end up doing CGI. Now, if they did CGI originally right from the beginning, why add UFOs into their live streams and then cut it when the UFO was flying around? Doesn't make sense, you see the logic there. And I mean, we're talking proper UFOs, we're not talking computer glitches, we're talking UFOs. And just because I did a live chat yesterday and someone questioned my IQ level, and I actually had done a couple of tests. I wanted to make sure they were accurate, so I did a few years apart. But basically I was accepted into Mensa and I refused it. And someone after the live chat sent me a message saying, why the hell did you refuse being part of Mensa? Now, if anyone's done a Mensa test, you'll find out it's just a logic test. That's all it is. So are you saying, because I accept that someone that knows math or spelling or about football or about any other discipline is lesser than me because my logic worked out some logical questions? So if it was a test about math, I would fail. So does that make me smarter than the person that knows absolutely everything about math? No, it doesn't. It just means I had a bit of logic that I applied to that particular logic test. That's why I refused it, because I don't think I'm smarter than someone else that knows other stuff. So it's just a test on logic. That's all it is, and that's why I don't rate it. But I was curious to see what my IQ was. Sorry. This is going to change the way you think of a lot of things. So in Greece, ancient Greece, we had Cyclops, we had many different types of half this and half that creatures, and of course we call them myths. Now these are cylinder seals here that was from Sumerian times, which predate the Greece times, the ancient Greece times, by thousands and thousands of years. And these actually have, for example, here is a Cyclops. So this predates, so this means that the Sumerians actually knew about Cyclopses. Now, there is other cylinder seals that also have half this and half that creatures, including harpies, which really then does prove that, in my opinion, that Enki was messing around with DNA, creating, and that's why Enki ends up being Poseidon, who also then created half this and half that creatures. And actually in Sumerian text it talks about Enki saying humans, or Adamu, is his favourite creature. Right, don't hate me for this. This is Admiral Byrd, and I'm just going to point out where some sort of dome and flat earthers go. I know I shouldn't keep on about this, but it just really infuriates me that no one does their own research. So I'm here to help you guys, so you can thank me later. So this is Admiral Byrd. He's the person that they all quote when they say you're not allowed in Antarctica. So have a listen to this.
Is there any unexplored land left on this earth that might appeal to adventurous young Americans?
Yes, there is. And not up around the North Pole, because it's getting crowded up there now, because they find out it's really usable, not only to live in, but militarily.
Okay, so militarily, that's one reason why there's a treaty, not to mention the alien craft under the ice. But hey, that's one reason. So when you've got a military base there, you don't want anyone flying over. So hopefully that answers that question. It doesn't mean there's extra land or a dome.
But strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole, on the other side of the South Pole. Beyond the pole. Now, what he's talking about there is the actual pole itself. From Middle America.
So Middle America's below the Antarctica. So what he's talking about is there's more land basically we know underneath here there was land and there is land. So in other words, when you pass the pole here, you keep going, you'll eventually get to a point where there's no ice, which means that there's land, and that's what he's talking about. It doesn't mean extra land, doesn't mean a dome or anything else. That's what it basically means. So that's what he's talking about. Quickly, to the people that say water should drop off a ball, obviously there's a force because Earth is so big that it's causing its own force to push inwards. Now, what people are a bit silly doing, they don't actually think that they need a control. They're doing these experiments where water will drop off of a ball in the place that's already there. So that's a bit stupid. So what you actually need is a control. In order to do the control, you would need to take your football and the water that you're going to put on it and take it outside of the place that you're actually doing the experiment in. Dumpties. So you need to do that outside, which would be in space. Speaking of space, here it says in Hebrew 11:4, it says the stars in heaven. We can see stars, which means we can also see heaven. Of course we can't see heaven. There's a translation. It should have been space. As the stars in heaven. So everybody, we can see heaven. No, we can't. We can see space. So when you start reading the word firmament, you should really be reading it as atmosphere, and it makes a lot more sense. But obviously people don't want to do that. They want to add everything else like I've just said and make an invisible dome that no one's ever seen, and they make it a flat earth that no one's ever seen. I have some excellent smart people following me, which is great. So this person here has actually beat me to the gun. So I was going to be talking about the constellations, because the last video that I did regarding Hercules talked about Hercules having to fight a Hydra and then a crab that was sent by Hera, his stepmom. And as this person's jumped the gun, I thought I'd do the videos now. So basically, if you've watched my previous videos, you'll see that I prove that the ancient Greeks sometimes talk about things that actually happened thousands of years before the ancient Greeks, and they're actually talking about things that happened in Sumerian times. Now we know the Sumerians dealt with calendars because of the henges that surround the world, and actually the stone tablets talk about it. So when you've got the Hydra constellation, and they do, the Anunnaki did talk about constellations, and the crab constellations, maybe that's what they were talking about. The third task of Hercules, or Heracles, was he had to capture the Ceryneian hind, which was kind of like a stag, very fast, had gold horns. And when he finally caught it after a year of chasing it, the goddess Artemis came down because she actually used it to help pull her chariot. Now, bearing in mind, back in the olden days, chariots used to be the word for spaceship, which is why you got Eric von Donikin's book Chariots of the Gods. But they also did actually also use proper chariots as well. But anyway, so Artemis, the goddess, was upset that Hercules was taking it. She had a chat with her twin brother Apollo. They both worked out that Hera was the one that was pulling all the strings deliberately to make sure that Hercules would fail these tasks. So they allowed Hercules to take this Ceryneian hind, as long as once he proved that he captured it, he would release it, which he did. The fifth labour for Hercules was to clean out stables that belonged to King Agarus. I'm probably pronouncing that terribly wrong. And basically he had over 3,000 cattle and hadn't been cleaned for 30 years. So Hercules had to clean it. Now what he done was he actually rerouted the rivers to actually wash away all the dung from these cattle, and in return he was promised that if he could do it within a day, the king promised him a portion of his cattle. But when the king realized how Hercules had done it, he refused to honor his agreement. Actually later on Hercules ended up killing him anyway, but that's another story. So when Hercules went back to Eurystheus, he refused also to say that it was one of the labours, so it didn't count because he was accepting payment for it. The sixth task of Hercules, however, Eurystheus would say that it was still 7 left because of the last one. Watch my videos to find out. So this one was to do with the birds of Stymphalia. And these birds were trained by Ares to actually kill man. So Hercules went off to try and find them. He found them in a marshy area and couldn't actually get to them because the marsh, every time he walked on the marsh, he would start to sink. So Athena came along, appeared suddenly, and gave him a rattle. So he would then shake the rattle, and with his bow and arrows dipped in the blood from the Hydra, watch my previous videos, the poison blood, he could then shoot down these birds that eat men or kill men. Some escaped and some died, so he came back as a victor, and that was another task done. I'll be honest, I am slightly sad that people don't think, they just want to say God, but obviously when you have that question there is who made the Anunnaki. Let me just explain something that really should have been explained at school, or you should have paid attention if they did. Human body is made of chemicals, there's no denying that. Rocks are made of chemicals. Mud, you get where I'm going with this, is made of chemicals. Space even has chemicals. So when you have a moon, yes, moon was here back then, it says so in the Uralish, which is ancient text. When you have a moon that creates tides, if the water was stagnant, we wouldn't have two chemicals bashing into each other. But because the moon was here, we had a tide which created movement, and that created life when two chemicals or more touched each other. How many languages can you speak? Can you even read ancient Sumerian? Well, don't worry. Now in the British Museum, they have been photographing the 130,000 of these clay tablets and have an AI that's actually now reading the information off of the clay tablets. No one in the British Museum has sat and read the 130,000 of these tablets, simply because there's only a handful of people in the British Museum that can actually read Sumerian cuneiform, and they don't have all day to sit and read and translate the tablets. So now we have AI. The problem we have is they will not release obviously sensitive information where it talks about Nibiru, or where it talks about spaceships and chariots, as they used to be actually translated. So there will be some redactions, which is sad, but at least we will get some more information from the British Museum. I did a video a while back on the Baltic, what looked like a UFO or Millennium Falcon in the ocean. And I sort of said, why didn't they go back and look? Well, they actually did go back. They actually took a documentary crew with them, filming, and they went there and they took a dive down. They only ended up having one opportunity for one dive because of mishaps, etc. And when the guy touched it, it was black. Whatever it was black. And they cut a piece off near the edge and brought it back. Turns out it looks like the top, at least the top layer of it, is now rock. Whether or not it was formed over millennia. Now I'm going to run out of time here, so this will have to carry on the second one, but please watch the second one, it's fascinating. But Fox News then said no, it's rock, because they said it was rock and there's nothing to see here. Watch the next video, it's really... Following on from my last video about the Baltic UFO in the middle of the ocean, when Fox News heard that they had found a bit of black rock attached to whatever this is, they then put a video out saying that it's all rock, nothing to see here. Then the poor people that were actually doing the excavations or salvaging, trying to find out what it is, started getting death threats to their family as well. Now, bearing in mind Fox News is owned by elites, you got to wonder that the death threats are not by normal people, but by people that don't want them to go back and actually find out what it really is. In other words, elites. Now, the next bit is amazing. So they actually managed to get the LiDAR information type thing that they had, and you see this is a mountain in the ocean, and something came skidding along, smashed right through the mountain, ended up and landed there, which is the actual object itself. So was that a crashed craft? This is the third video regarding the UFO at the bottom of the ocean in the Baltic Sea. Now, you can watch the actual full documentary, The Mystery of the Giant Object Underneath the Baltic Sea. That's what it's called, The Mystery of the Giant Object Underneath the Baltic Sea. So you can watch that on YouTube. It's about 56 minutes. Now, there's things in there that they also say that I've not mentioned already, such as the temperature around the object or craft was normal until you actually get near it, and then it becomes freezing. actually freezing water, which is really weird because it's technically, why does this suddenly make the water frozen? And also it talks about, you'll see on the documentary if you watch it, about the Swedish Navy watching them as they do their search pattern. In other words, probably waiting for them to leave so they can go and dig this thing up. So do go and watch it, The Mystery of the Giant Object Underneath the Baltic Sea. The seventh task of Hercules was the Cretan bull. For that he had to go to Crete, and the bull was actually owned by King Minos. So he asked King Minos, could he take the bull? And funny enough, King Minos said yes, because that bull was causing so much problems there that he's actually glad to see it go. So Hercules then took it back to Eurystheus, gave it to him, who then locked it up into a stable. But it did, a couple of years later, apparently it broke free of that stable and went on a rampage and started causing more problems around the village, and eventually it was killed, which was quite sad because it was probably living better before Hercules got involved.